Can you please state your name and your birthday?
Luis Flores, February 18th, 1952.
Okay, and very quickly, I forgot to say that we're in Fort Worth, Texas. It is September 26th, 2015, and we're interviewing Luis Flores. Thank you for that. The first question I'm just going to ask you is, where did your family come from, whether it's somewhere from here in the United States or another country, and what year they arrived?
Okay, my family came from Mexico. I don't know exactly where it is. They came from a ranch called El Infiernillo, and it's close to Guadalajara and Ajijic, Mexico.
Okay,
they came in 6/29/1920, and I have their green card the day they came over, and I have the picture they took of them the day they came over. That's the picture when they came over.
Thank you.
That's my grandmother on the top, and they told me that she was 14 when she came over. So I checked her birth date, and her birthday is 1906, and 14 years later is 1920.
Can we have her name on tape?
Her name is Maria Isaac Rosas Flores. Rosas Rodriguez.
Okay, thank
you. No, Rodriguez Rosas.
Okay, thank you. And do you know your grandfather's information?
Yes. Which one?
Both of them.
Okay. Savino Rosas is my grandfather. Luz Flores is my other grandfather. Maria Rosas, I made a list for you if you want it. And then my other grandparents are Luz Flores and Lucia Flores.
Okay, and when your family arrived in the U.S., did they arrive directly in Fort Worth, or did they arrive in another city?
I think that they came directly from Mexico here. Our family had a pretty sizable estate in Mexico, and during the Mexican Revolution, when they were taking the property away from not necessarily the aristocrats, but the people who had property, the hired people told my great-grandfather, Florencio, they're coming to your ranch to take it. So that's when they fled, and they came across the border.
Okay, so they fled from the Mexican Revolution.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to go into your experiences in Fort Worth now, and I'll return to your family at the end of the interview.
Okay.
Can you please list any of the community or social or political organizations you've been a part of here in Fort Worth?
Mostly I've been an educator. I was a bilingual teacher, teacher's aide, principal, directors, and all of that. And I was a member of Fort Worth Association for Bilingual Education, and I got to be president one year. And then right now I'm president of TCU Hispanic Alumni.
Okay, and so can you tell us a little bit what you did in the organization, the bilingual education organization?
In the bilingual education, my job was mostly to help bridge the gap between bilingual education and regular education, because those were the first years that bilingual education actually came into existence when I was there. And then for the TCU Hispanic Alumni, our job is to help with the transition of Hispanics at TCU, to just mentor them and help them with whatever they need.
Okay, so you're an educator. What schools have you taught in Fort Worth?
Many. I was a teacher's aide at Washington Heights, De Zavala. I taught at Carroll Peak Elementary, Washington Heights Elementary. Where else? Carroll Peak, Van Zandt Gwynn, James E. Gwynn, Circle Park Elementary. Then I became vice principal at M.H. Moore Elementary, then principal at Diamond Hill Elementary for 11 years, principal at West Cliff Elementary for 2 years, director of instructional support for 7 years, director of professional development for 2 years, and then director of human resources for 4 years, I believe.
Okay, so this sounds like you need a lot of education to have all these positions.
Yes.
Or to access them. Can you tell us a little bit about your educational background?
Northside High School. I went 2 years to Schreiner Institute. It was called Schreiner Institute. It's called Schreiner College now. Schreiner College in Kerrville, Texas, 2 years. And then 2 years TCU, master's degree at Texas Women's University, and administrator certification at TWU also.
Okay, thank you. And these organizations, these educational organizations that you're in, do you recall the name of any of the other leaders of the organization?
I was in a special program called the CLP Program, Career Opportunities Program. In the early 70s, there weren't any bilingual teachers, so the CLP program was established to help locate bilingual teachers. I came into that program in 1972. I had 2 years of college already. So the program basically said, if you want to be a bilingual teacher, we'll help you with scholarships, and that's what I was going to be anyway. James Lehman was the director of that. Alicia Contreras was the assistant director, and they eventually named a school after her.
Okay, well, thank you for that. Can I ask you what years you graduated from college, since you've been mentioning the years that you started working?
Okay. Northside High School, 1970, Schreiner College, 1972, TCU, 1974, and then Texas Women's in 1977.
Okay, thank you. This may not be relevant necessarily to your experiences, so if it's not, just let me know. But we're part of a program that has a lot of oral histories and deals with Black and brown relations in Texas, especially here in Fort Worth. I wanted to know, in the educational field, since that's primarily your focus, what the racial relations were in the 70s, perhaps, when you started, if you had anything to do with teaching African American children or anything of that sort.
Yeah, I was a teacher at Carroll Peak Elementary, and that was the year that they were busing for interracial purposes. So Carroll Peak Elementary received all second graders, and then some were all black in some of the classes. I happened to get mostly the Hispanic students because I was a bilingual teacher. So I did that for many, many years, I guess.
So were there Anglo children in this school, or was desegregation putting Mexican children and African American children together?
The purpose of busing was to integrate the general school and to integrate the bused schools. I happened to be at the school where black, white, and brown would come because everybody in second grade was bused.
Okay.
So, and when they bust them over, they tried to keep the kids together. For example, Circle Park Elementary, Washington Heights Elementary, George Clark Elementary, they tried to keep them together. So I basically got Diamond Hill students, Washington Heights, and Circle Park. And then down the hallways, you know, Worth Heights and all them. So they tried to keep them together so that when they went back, they were still together.
Okay. So when you were in the classrooms themselves, were people, for example, African American students, were they kept in one classroom and Anglo students kept in another classroom and Hispanic students kept in another classroom, or were they integrated racially within the classroom, not just within the school?
They were integrated racially during PE and art and all of that stuff. But primarily they kept the classes together from their neighborhoods. So, for example, Diamond Hill had a lot more Anglos than some of the other neighborhoods.
Okay.
And you have to understand that back then there was a pretty good mix of 50-50 Hispanics and Anglos. For example, Northside, when I graduated, we only had 20 Hispanics in the whole school. And now Northside is almost 99% Hispanics.
Okay, well, thank you for explaining that. Can I have a little bit, obviously you have a lot of family history here. So can I have a little bit of your family history, your parents' names? You already said your grandparents' names. If you remember your uncles or aunts, definitely your siblings, and what they did here in Fort Worth.
Okay, that's where this comes in. It turns out that my great-great-grandfather had 3 wives, Maria Constanza, Isaac, and Lucina. And they didn't have any kids with her. They had a whole family here. And then Elohio and Isaac had my great-grandfather and my great-grandfather, who married my great-grandmother. They had 8 kids, and one of theirs is Isaac, which is my grandmother. So my grandmother married Sabino Rosas, and Sabino Rosas and Isaac had my mom, which is right there. So that's my mom, Guadalupe, and she married my dad, Elias Flores. So that's where it went from Rodriguez to Rosas to Flores. And then here are my brothers, David, myself, Luis, my sister Rachel, Alfred Florencio, and Rafael Raul. And then their kids.
Okay, well, thank you. And we have an archivist downstairs, so she would be more than happy to copy all this, and hopefully it can go in the same archive as this video is going to go in.
Okay.
And what did your family do when they got to Fort Worth? What was their labor? How did they adapt to the city?
Florencio worked at Swift and Armour, and he was kind of an accountant or something.
Okay.
He didn't speak English, but he still worked in the accountant department, and then other departments. Everybody else worked in Swift and Company and different things. Elohio was a baker. Rafael was a truck driver. Let's see. No, Elohio was a baker. Rodolfo started Rodriguez Festive Foods. I don't know if you've heard about that one. It was a big company that made tortillas, tamales, and all of that stuff, and they shipped nationally. Rafael was a truck driver. Sam went to the Army, and then he came back and he worked. He had a dry cleaning company. My grandfather, Savino, opened up a garage, and he was right across the street from my great-grandmother and great-grandfather. Boss's husband worked in the packing houses. Socorro's husband, Joe, he actually became the superintendent of Colonial Country Club, and he was the superintendent of the grounds. And Albert was a cook, and a chef, actually. He became a chef. My grandfather had the garage at 2120 North Calhoun, and he was right across the street from my great-grandfather, Florencio and Felicitas. So basically, everybody just came over here every Sunday, and that's where everybody kind of met. They met at my grandmother's house and my great-grandmother's house.
And was your mom a homemaker?
Yes. My mom did not. She went to college 2 years before we were born, and then she had all of us, and basically she was a homemaker until my brother Ralph left. Then my mom went back to college, and she went to TCU and got her degree way after mine. So and she became a teacher, and she was a teacher's aide for about 14 years while we were growing up. So she worked in Fort Worth ISD, but then when we all left the house, she went back and finished her degree at TCU.
And was that the school she originally went to, or did she go to another school?
She went to Mount Carmel Academy, which is used to be on Hemphill Street in South Fort Worth. That's where her first 2 years were.
Okay.
TCU for her next 2 years, and then she went to Texas Wesleyan for her master's degree.
Okay. Is she retired already?
My mom passed away
Okay, I'm sorry about that, but
several years ago.
It's very interesting to hear the story of your mother going back to college and becoming a teacher after all those years. And your father, he owned the shop for most of his life?
My grandfather,
Yes.
the garage.
Okay, and
He owned it all his life.
And what did your father do?
My father made furniture. He worked in furniture companies, and he was lucky enough to learn the special trade on how to make the knives and the saws to make furniture. So then he worked at Aide Company for many, many years. After that, a company from North Fort Worth asked him to come over, and he basically became the superintendent of the plant. So he spent a few years just putting together the machines, and then a few years training people, and then after that he managed the plant and managed the orders. It's called BH&W Manufacturing Company.
Here in Fort Worth?
Here in Fort Worth.
And he retired from there?
Yes.
And can I ask you now what elementary school you went to and junior high, then the high school you already mentioned?
Elementary, Washington Heights Elementary. Middle school, it was junior high back then, and J.P. Elder Junior High School, and then Northside High School. Funny you should ask that, because at J.P. Elder, it was pretty even with 50-50 Hispanics and Anglos. And in those days, the majority of Hispanics went to Trimble Tech, and the Anglos went to Northside High School. So Northside High School was basically all Anglo. Mm-hmm. And when I graduated, we only had 20 Hispanics. That particular year, right after I left, the next year, 9th grade moved from junior high school to high school. And all high schools started 9th grade except Trimble Tech. Trimble Tech did not start 9th grade with everybody else. So as a result, all the Hispanics that were at J.P. Elder, instead of going to the 9th grade at Trimble Tech, they all went to Northside for 1 year. And then the next year, Trimble Tech started admitting 9th graders, and the majority of them went to Trimble Tech, but that's when Northside High School started becoming more Hispanic.
Okay. So you basically went with 20 other or 19 other Hispanics in your class in high school?
More or less.
What was your experience in high school?
They were nice people. They treated me nice.
Okay.
As far as social things, all of my friends that went to Trimble Tech, that's where I gravitated.
Okay.
All my friends from Loma who were Hispanic, that's where I gravitated. So basically I was between two schools.
So, but you were treated well at that school, and so were your classmates that were Hispanic?
Yes. We didn't have any problems.
Okay, and once you went to TCU, or what were your experiences in TCU? Were there a lot of other Hispanic students? Were there any Hispanic student associations, anything like that?
Less than 1% minority at TCU when I went. So very, very small. So it's mostly the African Americans that were on the sports teams, and then a smattering of people. I was fortunate because I was in the CLP program, and all of the bilingual teachers were in my classes, so I got to be around a lot of the Hispanics, but we were still less than 1% of the whole school.
So there wasn't any Hispanic organizations on campus at that point?
Oh, no.
Because there were so few students.
Yes.
And why did you gravitate to TCU?
Well, it's funny. When I was in high school, we had a guy named Gary Martinic who made All-State, and he went to TCU, and he was going to play in his first football game, and I kind of got everybody, hey, let's go see him. And no, we don't go over there. We don't. So it ended up my brother and I went to go see him, and that's when I said, if he can be here, I can be here.
That's a great story. And did you really enjoy your time at TCU? Was it really formative in your life?
No. And the reason I say that is because I worked during the day as a teacher's aide and I went to school at night. So, and I was taking full course loads at night. It wasn't part-time. So it was really mostly just work.
So it was having two jobs.
It's having two jobs. Funny, my first class at TCU, and you have to remember that was in the early 70s. My first class, all the girls had matching skirts, matching blouses, matching coats, matching purses. They even wore gloves to class.
And how did since you mentioned how the women dress, how did the men dress?
Oh, they dressed like the typical 60s, you know, the button-down shirts, tucked in, pants, a little bit short with the penny loafers.
So TCU definitely had its own culture.
Had the regular culture from, you also have to remember that was more of a middle class and upper class college as compared to like a junior college. Junior college, you just had everybody, but TCU, being a private school, had people with money. So they dressed like the surfer movies, stuff like that, because they had the money.
And can I ask you why you went to the Schreiner Institute?
My counselor sent a letter of recommendation to them for me, and I went down there. I applied for an academic scholarship. I did not get it, but they gave me a work scholarship, which was basically covering everything.
And did you enjoy your time there? What were
I
your
loved
experiences
it. It's what changed me. I loved that school. I worked with a lot of international students from all over South America, Cubanos, Puerto Ricanos, San Salvador, all of these people. And when I say they changed me, that's when I saw the difference between being Hispanic in Texas and being Hispanic in other countries. And in other countries, they see going up the ladder as just a matter of opportunity and how hard do I work and all that stuff. Hispanics in Fort Worth and Texas didn't necessarily see it that way because they didn't have contacts and people at every level the way these people do. So that's what really changed me.
And as an educator, do you try to inculcate that, place that within your students in their mind?
Oh yeah.
They can advance as well, even if they don't know English when you're teaching them, but they can learn it.
When I was principal at Diamond Hill Elementary, I said we would be the highest scoring school in the north side. Then we were the highest scoring bilingual school. Then we were one of the first recognized schools. And it's still a very, very good school. I went 5 years without hiring a single teacher because nobody left. So it was a great school. It was a good school before I got there, but as the population changed over being Hispanic, you had to keep up that high level of excellence with a different population.
Can I ask you what your mission as an ESL educator has been, and what you have seen as your successes in this career? My mom and my family all said, once you get opportunities, it's up to you to help other people gain those opportunities, which is what I did. I always wanted to be a teacher, and I always wanted to, well, actually, I knew that I had to be a teacher because I wanted to be a principal. And I always wanted to be a principal, and I got to be one. So as a principal, you have to show that you treat everyone the same. And sometimes that's hard to do because you do favor people more than other people, and some people treat you better than other people. But it's and then all of the parents, all of the teachers, they all bring their biases on whatever they think, good, bad, or indifferent. And it's the principal's job is to make sure that everybody gets that opportunity. So the best way, and I always tell my teachers, I want you to be the best
teachers trained, not because I want you to be the best teacher trained, but because the best teacher trained helps my students. And that was my goal.
And so you've definitely, it sounds like you've reached your main life goals.
Yeah.
And I'm moving, do you have anything else to say about your education career, or do you want to move on to another subject?
No. I worked most of middle school and high school, and I worked all of college. So I didn't get to run around like the TCU people and people who didn't have to work.
Can I ask you where you worked?
Where I worked?
From high school through when you were in college?
First started cutting grass, and then after that I worked at the Mexican Inn for 5 years. I worked at Superior Meat Company for another 5 years. Then I got into college. I worked in the work-study program, so basically cleaning out the dormitories and stuff like that. And then when I was at TCU, I worked as a teacher's aide during the day, and then college at night.
What did you, the meat packing, was that a meat packing plant where you worked? That sounds like a very tough job. Was it?
Yes.
Do you want to say anything about that job?
It was cold. It was cold. It was manual labor. Basically, when I worked at night, all we did was clean out the plant. Cleaning out the plant means it has to pass inspection in the morning, so it can't be dirty.
So you did that during high school?
And college.
Okay. Was that during the summers, or was it when you were going to school?
When I was going to school.
Okay. So.
And I worked there when I was a teacher too.
So you had 2 jobs at one point?
3 jobs actually. As a teacher, I taught school. I worked at Superior Meat Company weekends and some afternoons, and then I taught Upward Bound classes at TCU.
Okay. And did you have the 3 jobs because teaching didn't pay enough?
Teaching, yes and no. I mean, it just depends on where I wanted to live in TCU, which had more expensive housing, so I did buy a house there. Yes, I worked my whole life, so it was not unusual just to do that. I also refereed high school and college basketball for 18 years. So, and I did that as a teacher and as a principal. So
what, outside of strictly academic interest when you were a teacher or in your education career, you referee, did you do anything else aside from referee?
Played baseball. I played on the city teams, city leagues. The city leagues eventually became the Mexican League, just like they have the soccer teams now, and they play in Northside and all over the place, and primarily Hispanics. Right? Well, we had, when we started baseball, it was just like all mixed. And then after I left, they started having kind of like the Mexican League and then the semi-pro league and all that. But when I was playing, it was just all mixed.
Okay. Can I ask for the name of your team that you
Braves. I play for the Braves.
What position did you play?
Mostly right field.
Okay.
Second base and right field, but mostly right field.
And how many years did you do that for?
14.
So was that in the 90s and the 80s?
As a teacher until I was 33, so 52, 62, 72, 82, up until about 1982 to 85, somewhere around there.
Okay, and what area of town did you move to that you said you wanted to buy a house? So here, near TCU?
I grew up in Loma, which is around Washington Heights. Now they call it far north side, but it's not, it's still Loma. 28th Street was the boundary between Loma, and Main Street was the boundary for Diamond Hill, and 28th Street this way was north side. So I always lived in Loma. Then I stayed at home until I finished college, and when I was at TCU, looked around and said, this is where I want to live. So I got married and I bought a house right by TCU. Still live there.
I want to ask you about your family, your own nuclear family that you've made. But can you tell me a little bit about the neighborhood you grew up in?
Loma.
Yes.
Loma was, Washington Heights was about 4 or 5 blocks away from Kirkpatrick Elementary. Kirkpatrick was predominantly African American, and Washington Heights was predominantly Anglo and Hispanic. Maybe a little bit more, maybe 60% Hispanic. So the great majority of my friends were there. We had a great school, and the teachers really worked for us. We had a great principal, Wade B. Watson, and I always felt like they really wanted us to succeed. As a result, I still see a lot of my friends I went to school with in 1st grade, 2nd grade, all the way up to 6th grade. Still see them all the time.
And so you moved to the TCU area. Can I have your wife's name just to get on tape?
Joanne Maldonado Flores.
And what year did you marry her?
1974.
And do you have children?
Yes, 2. I have a son who, he's 35. He's off and on for 2 years of college. He's going back now. And I have a daughter who graduated from Stanford. She has a master's and a bachelor's from Stanford.
And what's her career?
She, her degree is in legal, what is it? Educational leadership and sociology and history. So she worked in charter school. She became a vice principal in charter school, and then she became a recruiter for Stanford University. And she did that for a number of years, and then she stopped that, and she just stayed at home for a while. So now she has a baby, and she's helping open a charter school in San Francisco.
Okay, and I don't think we got her name.
Veronica Flores.
And your son, is he going to TCU?
No, he's going to TCC right now.
Okay.
He's finishing his first 2 years.
Okay, well, thank you. And in your neighborhood, as a child, did you go to church?
Mm-hmm.
Can I ask you what church you went to?
Guadalupe.
Which is in Loma?
Virgen de Guadalupe in Loma, yes.
Okay. And I'm guessing by the name it was a majority Mexican American church?
Yes.
And what church do you go to now?
I go to St. Patrick's in TCU by my house. Funny that La Virgen de Guadalupe was not really a church. It was a, what do they call it?
Was it a mission?
Not a mission. It had a different name. Probably a mission. So when it was time for me to get married, I had to go to All Saints because it was a bona fide church. So I had to get married in All Saints, even though I went to Guadalupe Church.
Okay. And when you got married, did you and your wife live in La Loma for a little bit before?
No. We lived right off of University and then moved to Southside and stayed there 5 years and then moved to TCU.
Okay. And is your wife a homemaker, or does she have a career?
She was a teacher for 31 years.
And is that how you met her?
No, I met her at Northside High School.
Okay. So you went to high school together?
Yes.
Is there anything else you would like to add to your oral history?
I don't know.
Well, thank you for your time. It was great hearing your story and your especially your detailed family history.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.